Recordware.
Hello folks, and welcome back to Recordware. It has been a while, but I thought I'd start off this little series with a banger, a Lotus Sport 110. For those of you not in the know, this bike is based on the revolutionary track model that Chris Boardman piloted to a gold medal back in the Olympics in 1992. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, as I plan to introduce you to some depth to this beautiful bike. So sorry in advance if this is a long video, but length equals passion in this regard. We will talk about the history of the 110, how this particular example has been outfitted, what to expect in terms of maintenance, and in the end I will leave you with some imagery and commentary of me riding it. The story of the Lotus Sport 108 and 110 is fairly well researched, so I won't get into too much detail here. For those of you that like a written account, I do recommend The Story of a Bike by Paul Greasley. It all started when Mike Burrows and Lotus came together and produced the revolutionary Lotus 108. It had a carbon monocoque frame that had actually been tested in a wind tunnel and omitted both seat stays, one of the chainstays on the other side, and one of the fork legs, again on the other side. This surely helped Boardman win his Olympic medal and attract the suit at the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. The public and surely the riders demanded that a road version be made, and Lotus obliged. They changed the design to sleeker look, helped by the addition of one more chainstay, again on the other side, and one more fork leg. While this design can be considered more conservative in some ways, in my opinion it is quite becoming of the bike itself. The 110 also had a racing career, as Boardman, being challenged by a Tour de France rider, won a stage in the 1994 Tour de France with a speed of 52 km an hour, a record which has only been broken fairly recently. Using the Superman style, this bike also still holds the hour record with an unfathomable distance of 56.375 kilometers. Only 263 models were built, most of them not by Lotus themselves, but by Aerodyne, a small company in South Africa with ties to Formula One manufacturing, as had Lotus at the time. This frame has been completely restored to perfection by Target Composites in the UK. As you can see, the way the carbon weave shows through and the paint darkens towards the edges makes this a stunning example of carbon workmanship, both from the creators and restorers. These frames only came in one size and you had to cut down the seat post in order to achieve your required size. You then had to cut through the carbon again to insert one of those two screws into this unbelievably small seat post in order to fit this custom bracket. This bike's seat post has never been cut, which makes it one of the rare ones among the rarest. This bike does not have its original fork anymore, since those tended to break away at the steerer tube. Therefore, a fork from a giant MCR, another creation of Mike Burrows, was used, and with the original molds, this version is as close to the original one while still being 100% roadworthy today. The front wheel is a Mavic 3G, another revolutionary design of the time that is still fast even today. These wheels could also be converted by using a different axle from a front wheel to a back one. This bike has them both, but is set up with a Mavic Comet disc in order to achieve ultimate aero performance. It has overall been set up to use Mavic parts whenever possible, since those exceeded the ones from Shimano both in craftsmanship and design back in the time. Thus the Mavic 631 Starfish chainset was chosen. complete with an 860 front and an 840 rear mag. The saddle is a Selle Italia Flight Evolution model, which also had new lacquer applied to its thin carbon shell. The cockpit is made up of the Look Ergo stem, the Mavic 355 handlebars and the Mavic 357 handlebar extensions. The brake levers are the Mavic 451 and the brakes are Mavic SSCs. The tires are of course glued on tubulars, in this case the two for Elite Jet ones with a width of only 20 mm. Now we come to the maintenance part. General maintenance is quite easy, the same as on any other bike. This one hasn't been completely set up for a rider height just yet, and therefore shows a lot of its Jaguar outer cable housings. Those cables are then nearly completely internally routed. The rear brake cable on the other side is the easiest one of those, as the housing is completely run through the frame all in one piece until it enters back here. However, this concept would have been nearly impossible to maintain with the shifting cables, especially the rear one, because this has to run through the frame here, then take an over 90-degree turn here, then another over 90-degree turn here to come back out here again. These cables have been provided by the factory with internal cable guides baked into the carbon itself that run through the whole length of the frame and therefore make maintenance relatively easy. This is where we get to touch on some of the more exclusive problems of the 110. The fork situation has already been explained. Yet the frame itself can come with some problems as well. The frame was manufactured back then by molding it in two halves and then putting these two halves together. This means that the whole structure is quite light, being hollow inside. But it also meant in some very rare cases that the two halves would split along this seam on the top tube. One has to keep in mind that those are handcrafted examples of then cutting-edge technology, so slight manufacturing deviations are to be expected. In general though, 110s have no problems with being ridden fast, as many of their owners of the Lotus Sport 110 Club still do. This is also where I can give you some of my impressions on the ride. The Lotus Sport 110, while the road version, is still a track-derived bike, and 20mm tires on 90s carbon wheels weren't particularly known for comfort. That being said, it surprised me how much flex was allowed by the rear chainstay and how much comfort resulted from that. As a rider, I lean on the heavy side with perhaps 90 kilograms all in all, so your experience may vary. Otherwise, the bike is as fast as they get. It seems to accelerate without end and is practically begging you to get to 40, nay 50, nay 60 kilometers an hour where it's most happy. The handling is stiff, direct and confidence inspiring. It won't replace your training bike, but it could probably still hang with modern aero bikes and is sure to turn everyone's head at every bike meet that you could ever enter. I therefore hope that you have enjoyed this somehow short, fast from the past. I can definitely recommend Riding Run if you ever get the chance. Availability is very limited though, with only 1 to 3 bikes coming up for sale each year, and many being in very permanent collections. Prices are also high and definitely climbing. Cheap restoration finds are very unlikely since most of the bikes are accounted for, and yet even those restorations is probably a costly endeavor if you want it done right. However, this bike is my absolute favorite bike in the world, and I don't think that there's even something that comes close to it in subjective beauty, but also I think in objective relevance to the cycling industry and the passion that we all share. That has been all, folks. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Rig Hardware. Rig Hardware.